Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Currently, we are making a Let's Play sort of tutorial, but really a Let's Play of Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admiral's Edition. And this is episode number 7. Now, we're still in the Allied setup phase. We've set up all the A's, all the B's, and we're into the C's. We've already done Canada. This time we are going to look at Celebes and, drumroll, Ceylon. Now, Celebes and Ceylon are both very critical parts of the map. Kind of look at where they are here. So here's Celebes. It's located just to the south of Borneo. We've talked about Jalo. We've talked about the Philippines a little bit. Now, we haven't set up the Philippines, but we've talked about their importance. The next place for the Japanese, after hitting Balikpapan and Tarakan and the Philippines, is Celebes. And Celebes has three different, not pretty nice bases on the island. You have Macassar. Macassar has a level 4 port. It has the potential of a 6 airfield. You have Kindari, which is 3 and 2 and 4 and 5, and you have Monado, which is 2 and 2 and 3 and 7. So all of these are not tiny. They're not huge either, but they're, pretty decent bases. And if we had a chance to build these up, they could maybe become something more. Now, we will be setting these up this time and we'll go through and talk about, why we're doing certain things. These are kind of fallback positions, they're the initial fallback positions. Now, we've already transferred some planes out here to Monado, and we will be moving stuff back here that's, halfway historically accurate. It's not gamey. We'll be bringing back, some Dutch stuff down to Celebes here. Celebes is also important as a speed bump, and I'm loath to kind of use that term, or I would be in the real world when you're talking about real troops and real people. But, we've got digital soldiers out here, and we need these guys to hold on as long as they can, in some cases, against the Japanese to just slow them down, to give us a chance to start getting things in from the United States, to start organizing our forces better, to put up a true defense. We need some quote unquote speed bumps. Celebes is one of those, and a place where, we're going to try to slow them down a little bit. So we will get to that this turn. I have not set this up yet, so there are really no ships in Celebes. It's going to be a few ground units, a few planes that we have here. Pretty much, there are going to be no ships. Now, we will be running some things from Surabaya over here to supply them, to make sure they have some supplies and fuel, but we'll get into all that. Now up to Ceylon, and one of the most important locations in the game, which is Colombo. And why is Colombo so important? Well, Colombo has a size 9 port. It will have a large airfield, already has a decent sized airfield, will have a large one. But this is a massive port, and we will be using this port to our advantage. If we go to the big screen here, obviously, Abadan up here, we're going to be going mainly into Karachi. We've talked about that before. Same with Aden. Cape Town is going to be doing a lot to Perth, but it will also be doing some to Colombo, as will these other locations. I also do a lot of Calcutta to Colombo, and Colombo is kind of your staging base. As the Japanese, ooh, let's draw. I like any opportunity we get where I can draw. As the Japanese push here or here, and then, down this way, as they make these two pushes, if you look at the map over here, really, Colombo, on this side of India, you have Calcutta, Colombo, and Rangoon that form kind of a strange looking, pyramid. But Colombo, you're going to be running supplies and troops into Colombo that will either go to Calcutta or you will try to get them into Rangoon, hopefully with very low victory point value ships, because they will be under constant attack. But it makes Colombo very important. Now, before I go set everything up and come back, I just wanted to cover one thing that has come up in the questions, and I thought it was a good question, and maybe something I didn't cover enough in the air unit, and that has to do with our search arcs, whether they be naval search or ASW patrol. What do these colors mean? What are they? So here we are at Macassar, okay? Now, I've talked about pulses before, right? And so the game has a day pulse and a night pulse, and we've looked at things and we've said, well, we always want our aircraft flying during the day, for instance. We don't really want to be running any night missions because the Japanese are better, et cetera, et cetera. So there's two pulses to every day, a day and a night, right? But for aircraft that are flying during the day, there are also two pulses, and that would be morning and afternoon. And what these colors represent are the zones that will be searched. So dark blue are zones that will be searched in the morning. Green, dark green, are zones that will be searched in the afternoon. Okay, so you're going to be covering 6 zones. And why is that? Well, we have our search on 50% of our squadron. Our squadron has 6 aircraft. Okay, what this means is the search 50 means 50% of your aircraft per pulse. So this means 3 are going to go out in the morning, and then 3 again in the afternoon because you've got search 50. Now let's bump this up to, let's say, 70. Okay, so you're going to have 4 going out in the morning and 4 going out in the afternoon. Now, how does that work? And what are we seeing here? Now you've got, uh, oh, it's going to be cut off here a little bit because it's not quite 4 and 4. It doesn't make it to 8, right? So what you're seeing here, what does black mean? This means a zone that's being covered twice because you've selected enough planes from your percentage selection here that it's being covered twice. So if it's in black, that means that, morning, afternoon, and then this is being covered again. So that's what that means. Now you may say, okay, what about, let's go look at ASW. ASW, let's look someplace a little less cluttered. Okay, ASW, this works. It's the exact same thing, only it's light blue and light green. And they do it this way just in case you have, a naval search going on and an ASW search at a base. And so for ASW, this is the morning search, this is the afternoon search. And you can play around with those percentages. Maybe you want things covered double time. If that's the case, once these things start getting colored black, they are getting covered a second time. So that's how those search arcs work and what these colors mean. Now, if you hit the Z key, it's a shortcut to see every search arc that you're running in the game. So if you ever want to say, what areas am I covering? This will show it. Now here you see we've got a naval search here, and we're pretty much covering almost both morning and afternoon because it's almost all black. So let's go see what that naval search is. This is ASW, ASW, ASW. Oh, this is search, sorry. Search 40%, but see we've got 11 planes, so it's 4.4 planes. If you count all this up, it will correspond to the number of sectors, because one plane covers a 10-degree slice in the morning or in the afternoon. It's one plane per 10-degree slice. Now, some of those slices can be covered more than once. And so that's arcs and how the colors work. So I am going to go set up Celebes and Ceylon, and I'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about what we did. Okay, everyone, I am back, and Celebes has been set up, as has Ceylon, and we'll get to Ceylon here in a minute. We're going to do Celebes first, but even before that, I just want to back up because I was thinking about what we talked about with these arcs. So let's hit Z again, and I just want to make sure that everyone was clear on this. Okay, so this is a naval search arc. Normally, this would, well, you can see it underneath here. The blue is the morning, the green is the afternoon, and the black is both morning and afternoon. Now that's for naval search. For ASW, and I'm going to try to find one if I can. I was looking all over for one where we overlap, and maybe we just don't this early. But for the ASW, it's almost identical. It's light blue, it's lighter green. That's just to differentiate it from naval search. But then it's white where it happens uh, twice. And I'm sure somebody in the comments will say, "Hey, you did that, here or there." But I just can't remember. I've got the Z up here, and I was looking all over, and I'm thinking with ASW, maybe right now we don't have any overlaps. But if you do, this will appear white, just like this appears black for the naval search. So I just wanted to point that out before we moved on. It's a very important concept. I know it's a question that people have. What do these colors mean? So hopefully that answered it. If it did not, please, um, say so in the comments. We'll talk about it some more. It's one of the, prime things going on in this game, these naval search arcs or your ASW arcs. There are also some really good threads on the Matrix forum about this, and even some pictures that show you, exactly how these arcs work. If you just put in Naval Search Arc, for instance, in the search function, you should be able to find a good thread about it if you still have some questions. But like I said, put it down in the comments if you want, and we'll talk more about it. That's the whole purpose of these videos. So on Celebes, we have three bases that matter. Everything else is barren. You can see there's, no uh, air groups, there are no infantry, there are no ships, there's nothing much going on at all of these bases. But we do have Monado, Macassar, and Kendari. Now, Macassar and Monado, we transferred planes there. So we transferred these level bombers, the LB. Let me turn off that volume. We don't need to hear the click every time, do we? We transferred out 8 medium level bombers out here, and we are running naval search with those. So we're going on the coordinates 30 to 100 clockwise. We've got them up 50% of them up in each pulse, or in the morning, 50%, so 4, and then 4 in the afternoon for a total of 8. Now we need to remember, and I have made a note, that I do believe part of this squadron and potentially part of the other squadron. Well, I don't have my notes right in front of me. Were left behind. Oh, I think they were in Summerina. Anyway, we will look at that in a future episode. You always want to keep good notes when you've transferred out a squadron and there's one or two left behind. Just don't kind of want those orphan squadrons, a part B of a squadron out there all by itself unless you actually mean to do it. Sometimes it makes sense to split these squadrons into 3 if you can do it. This one, of course, we cannot. But some of these squadrons, you can split them down, and it might give you more coverage for your search if that's what you need or want. So indeed, we have 1 plane, 2 planes, 3 planes, 4 planes in the morning, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the afternoon. If we bumped that up to 100%, they would all get, exceptionally tired. Their card game would suffer at the officers' mess hall, but this would all be black because this is naval search. Uh, so anyway, that's Monado. We have at each one of these 3 major bases here at Celebes, we have kind of the same situation. We've got a base force that's an engineer unit, and we've got an infantry group that's kind of like a garrison battalion infantry unit. Now, this one out here is pretty good. It's 42. The base force, these engineers, they provide some aviation support, which allowed us to transfer these planes in. They've got some engineers, etc. Now, everywhere on this island, the engineer units, we are turning the replacements on. Why is this? I kind of mentioned it earlier when before I broke away, and that is we're looking at Celebes as sort of a speed bump. And so we're not going to, take off from these bases and, evacuate everyone out. Instead, we want the Japanese to have to come and land and fight to have to get these major bases on the island. Well, as part of that, we want to keep these engineer units repairing. So when we haven't really talked a lot about ground units, but we're about to talk a lot about them because the next section is China, and China is pretty much all a ground war. And so we'll be talking a lot more about it. But when we look at Monado, we've got fortifications of one. Um, Oh, unlike coal, I am going to build these fortifications. Now that puts you in a precarious supply situation, but I'm going to do it, and that's also why I'm going to have the replacements on for this base force. It's not just going to be for the planes. Now the reason coal does it is this airfield is going to get bombed like crazy, and you want to have your base force repairing it. And if you lose a few engineers, digital engineers, it's not the biggest deal in the world. So let's replace these guys. Let's replace, any of their equipment they lose to the extent that we can and rebuild this air base because we want visibility into what the Japanese are doing here. As you can see, this is one of the closest places we have to the Japanese. It's going to get real close real fast when they sail around, and take Davao or any of the other things out here on Mindanao Island. And so they're going to be really close to us. We want visibility into all of that. These planes, they're not the best planes. They're okay, they're fine. We're really sending them out for recon and information. Now, the other reason I'm going to say let's build up these fortifications is when the Japanese do land here, they're going to have to bring some engineers to to disrupt our fortifications, to blow them up, however you want to look at it. They're going to have to, first of all, not just beat our troops, they're going to have to take out our fortifications. And so that's part of the advantage of building up your fortifications is it's going to make the Japanese have to bring a little bit bigger force. And if we do that at all three places, great. I will mention, by the way, it's possible you can keep Kendari. I have done that before. Of course, I beefed up Kendari quite a bit, but you can make Kendari a pretty decent fortress, or Macassar, because Macassar, one or the other, because Macassar is very close to Surabaya, and you can, sometimes hold on to this little nexus here. Again, we're following just kind of a basic setup, basic spreadsheet. We're not going to think about trying to do these, interesting, crazy things that maybe you do the fourth time you play the game and say, hey, I'd rather have Kendari and whatnot. And so let's look at Monado one more time. It's the 2237, so it does have a nice big airfield. It's already at a 3. Down here at Kandari, this is already a 4 and a port 3, and Macassar is a 4 and a 3. So, they're all, these two are similar, a little bit bigger than Monado. At Kandari, we kind of have the same situation, right? We have this infantry battalion, okay, and we have a base force of engineers. Kendari, I again am going to build fortifications, which goes a little bit, against the spreadsheet. That's fine. Um, but this is the same idea. We could evacuate these guys out here. They're only an assault strength 18, and let me tell you, that's definitely not worth ever losing a transport over to get an assault strength 18 out. This one out here at a 42, I mean, that's questionable. Going to pick these guys, let's see what their load cost is. So their troop load cost is 1248, cargo 1. I mean, that's not even that much. You could send out one halfway decent transport and pick up these guys. It's something I've done in past games. It seems like a really nice unit to just kind of, you know, play Alamo out here at Monado. We'll think about that as the game goes on. Now at Macassar, same idea. We've got this base force out here. They're engineers, and we have an infantry unit. It's a battalion, 31. These are all stylized as garrison battalions. Um, and so, but that doesn't mean you can't move them out if you don't want to, or if you do want to. Excuse me. Um, Again, you know, I'm going to build up Macassar. I always like to build the fortifications pretty much everywhere, just to maybe make the Japanese take an extra day or two. Heck, sometimes it can take an extra couple of weeks. I think I mentioned in the previous Borneo episode that the guns of Tarakan, I should, if during this game, the same thing that happened during the last time I played takes place, where Tarakan just blows the crap out of, like, 10 different Japanese transport ships, we will definitely call that episode The Guns of Tarakan. So you just never know. I built up this fort, and it just took them 2 to 3 weeks to take Tarakan, which really slowed down the Japanese war machine, which is all you're trying to do with these bases anyway. If we're not trying to slow them down, we should especially get this unit out, and maybe this one, because it's only a I say it's only a 31. 31's okay, and it's a very low load cost. So again, something going forward, if we think, hey, it's a lost cause, we're out, they take Balik Poppin very fast, let's maybe send a fast transport over here, grab them, bring them back to Swerbaya. Um, eh, you know, things to think about, right? Kendari, Macassar, Monado, they're all kind of the same. Now we have, let's look at the planes that we brought down here to Macassar. So we have 6 of these same 139 WH-3, the medium level bombers. Again, we're doing a naval search. Now, because we have a few less, we're actually doing a 70% search, which should send up 4 in both different phases of the search patrol, in the morning and in the afternoon. And that's really Macassar. I mean, or not only Macassar, that's really Celebes. There's not more going on there. I will tell you, as you're trying to get things out of the Philippines to the extent that we are, or these Hong Kong, when we do get to Hong Kong, there are just a lot of, ships, cargo ships that you're trying to get out of here. Sometimes they can stop here along the way if they're limping, if they're low on fuel, because you're bringing them out of Hong Kong hot as hell, at full speed. So, if they can't stop at Jalo for some reason, which is really what you're kind of setting Jalo up for, if they can't, they can, come on to Celebes, because it will fall a little bit later. Just in my experience, whether it be against the AI or human players, they really focus on the Philippines, taking that, and taking Malay and Sumatra. And I always feel like, the backside of Borneo here and Celebes maybe happens during the kind of the second wave, the second or third wave even. It's not as big of a deal. But we're going to be sailing all kinds of anti-sub stuff up here with these destroyers. We're going to try to pick off a few of these Japanese subs. And we're going to try to hold on to Celebes as long as we can. With that said, let's go over here to Ceylon. Now, what's happening at Ceylon? First, let's take the 2 smaller bases that appear on the south and the north. So here we have Kogala, okay? We're strategic moving these guys to Colombo, and these guys we're just leaving right here. They're an assault strength 19. You don't want to leave an unguarded base altogether. Now, Kagala does not have, at a key location like this, Kagala does not have a garrison requirement, so we could, move it to the more important town of Colombo. But we don't want to leave this completely unguarded. So we're going to leave that unit here. As a matter of fact, these engineers we are going to send to Colombo, and in 2 turns we're going to bring them right back. Now, why in the world would we do that? Well, for reasons I guess kind of unknown, the garrison at Colombo is under trooped. It's under garrisoned. It needs 40, and we've only got 10. Okay, so we've only got uh, 10 assault strength that must come from, yeah, it comes from the coastal defense unit. The fortress gives us 10 assault strength, but that's the only assault strength that we have here. Now we are bringing this infantry unit, I believe. Yes, we are bringing this infantry unit down to Colombo, which has 19. It's a start. Okay. And we don't need these guys, in the middle of the island here at, what is this, Dambula or Dambuya. We do not need them here. So we're going to rail them down to Colombo, obviously. This engineer force will probably bring down there eventually. I can't remember. I think at Dambula, yeah, we're expanding the airfield and the forts here. It's a pretty good size airfield. We could run some planes off here. You could also argue it's kind of a waste out here in the center of this island. Bring them to Colombo. That's really where you're going to have all your planes. That's something to think about. There's not a garrison requirement here. I'm just going to do it. How about that? Whenever I see things like this, I'm sure Cole had a very good reason, and in the comments we could talk about it and whatnot. But my general theory of playing this game is when you see a base like this, get this unit. If you don't have a garrison requirement, get every unit you can out to the coasts. The coasts are where the action is. That's where the Japanese generally are going to bomb. Now, could they do a paradrop right here? Sure, they could, and it's going to be very embarrassing if we get to a point here where, the Japanese run some kind of paradrop mission and land here at Dumbola. And I mean, I guess we'll all get a good laugh out of it. I'm not counting on it. Now, on Ceylon, eventually we should have enough aircraft up. We should have enough spotters and everything else going on. We should also, kind of wait until if the Japanese take everything here, they take Rangoon, maybe Port Blair, or they start to move into India, and we start to think, we're now in range of them actually doing that, then maybe we'll rethink things. Until then, move everything out to the coast is my general way of playing because that's usually where the action is. So here at Kagala, though, we do want to leave, a small force just in case you get some kind of landing here. This is a little better protected because it would really take a paradrop. Up at Jaffna, we kind of have a similar idea. We're going to leave both of these units here. It's a assault strength 19, just not that big of a deal. Here you've got some engineers, you've got 4 aviation support. I mean, this unit's not going to make much of a difference. We'll just leave them there. So when this infantry unit gets down to Colombo, and I believe, yeah. Well, what's going to happen is this is going to build up a little bit, but when this gets to Colombo and that gets to Colombo, that will relieve our garrison problem. Until then, we're going to lose a victory point each turn to the extent this garrison is not properly maintained, which seems kind of silly considering that Colombo is one of our key strategic towns. So before we get to Colombo, though, let's talk about Trichomoly. Now, Trichomoly has some torpedo bombers. that we are going to start training immediately. And luckily enough, these guys actually have torpedoes. So you see here in the yellow, they have torpedoes. Early in the game, oftentimes using torpedoes will be red. Now I can tell you, if that's red, it's fine. Um, if this goes out on an actual mission, not just a training mission, and it has no torpedoes, it will automatically use bombs. You don't have to say, oh, crap, I have this thing selected as using torpedoes, and now it's not going to do anything because I don't have any torpedoes. You can keep it on using torpedoes if you want. I mean, if it's a dive bomber like this, and if it doesn't have torpedoes, then it will drop bombs. But we've got some torpedoes here. It will just be training. You know, let let's hope it's not dropping torpedoes with this maximum range of 0. We've got the altitude at 8,000. That kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of these torpedo bombers. Now, torpedo bombers will drop down to drop their payload. Somebody that knows the numbers will probably comment. I believe they drop to maybe 2,000 feet. That's one of, in some ways, I guess it's not super important, but they do drop before they drop their payload. I mean, that's kind of the purpose of. Well, these aren't dive bombers. These are torpedo. That's actually a good question. I'll look that up before next episode if there's a difference. I mean, is Wildebeest considered we've got it as just a torpedo bomber. Are torpedo bombers considered dive bombers? Well, that's a good question. Now I want to know, and I'll find out before next episode. But we're training it on naval attack. We've got it out there, using torpedoes. It's not going to be, but anyway. Now here we have several ships, and I've got them all set up now. And let's kind of go through them very quickly. We've got this, these are what I call the most generic of the generic cargo ships. 4,000 endurance, 1,000 capacity, and they move at a 10. It doesn't really, I think, in this game get worse than that. There might be something else, but I can't remember what it is. The victory value on these things are only 1. So send these suckers into the fire, and they will be going into Rangoon because a lot of them are going to be destroyed. Now I flipped over here to Colombo because we have a bunch of these. Well, these are a little better. These are 12,000, 12, 3,900. Oh, we only had one more of these. Okay, now this actually shows what I use these ships for. So 4,000, 1,750 capacity on this one, speed 10. Where's it going? North Mail. These are the ships that you use to make your small little island runs. So Adu or Mail here at Ceylon, down in Australia, when you're going, across to Tasmania or out to Lord Howe Island or something like that. Um, these ships are really good for that. Now, I just said, hey, send this sucker into Rangoon. You can also use them for that. So if they have, if they're worth 1 or 2 or 3, anywhere 8 or under, I consider disposable is not the right word. You don't ever want to lose a ship, but those are the ships that you throw into the line of fire. You send them into the hot war zones where you need all the supply you can get. But if you lose the ship, you're not going to lose any sleep tonight. So that and these little island hops, and we've got those little cargo ships everywhere. Now let's get back to Trichomoly. So we've got this one. I guess I started over here. We've got this one. I'm sending this over to Colombo. All right, and once it gets over there, we'll figure out what to do with it. We may have that go to a do. We may have it, bring some supply initially up to Madras. We can figure out what we're going to do, or something along the coast here, like Cochin, something like that. We have this AK Etria pretty decent capacity, decent endurance, got a nice speed of 14, so we send that to Cape Town. We've got the Hollyhawk, which is going to be running um, some anti-sub here. It's a 4 anti-sub. We're going to be merging that with the task force that will be running from Madras to Colombo. So it will be doing anti-sub. Now you may say, well, gosh, why do we need anti-sub for this little hop? Well, you want anti-sub here in general because the Japanese are very likely to maybe want to run a sub here, maybe here. These would be prime spots. If I was a Japanese player, this is where I would put subs. And so if it's running this route, you might as well put an anti-sub ship in there, not only to protect the task force, which is important, but to just run general anti-sub stuff so that you know it's here. And so we're going to have it merge with that task force. You see, I named it Merge, Madras to Colombo, so we remember. Now this one is kind of doing the same thing. It's going to go out to Adu and meet this Task Force 422 that evidently we have not set up yet. When the time comes, we will figure out which task force that is. For now, I just named it that out of, convenience, but we will figure out which task force this should be with. This does not have a huge endurance, so I don't think it'll be going all the way to Perth or something. We'll figure that out later. Then we have these two KVs. So the KVs are corvettes. They sound like sleek, fast ships, don't they? They run a lot of the really good anti-sub. And so that's what we've got them doing here. ASW Colombo. So we're going to send them around to Colombo. Now we haven't given them a patrol zone yet. They're just going to come around to Colombo in like essentially one turn. Next turn, we're going to give them, a triangle patrol zone. Most every patrol zone you set in this game, you kind of make a triangle because you've got 3 legs, and depending on your merge and react, you can cover, a very nice section of the map. And we definitely want that in Colombo because there will be a lot of shipping that comes in and goes out from Colombo. Now this is exciting. This is our first aircraft carrier. Um, in the tutorials, we kind of looked at the Lexington a little bit, talked about aircraft carriers in general, but we really didn't do a whole lot with them. I just kind of used it to illustrate how planes can, be on ships, not only aircraft carriers, they can be on other ships, and just kind of showed you in general what an aircraft carrier task force looks like. Well, we're building another one here, and it just so happens that the Hermes, which is a British aircraft carrier, was here at Trincomalee. Um, it was down here in Ceylon. So, okay, now this is a light carrier. It's not going to carry a ton of planes, excuse me. You can see here, carrier aircraft, it can carry up to 18. Now compare that against the U.S. carriers that can, carry 85, 90, 95 planes even at the start of the war. So you're talking about a very tiny number of planes. So let's just click on planes and let's look at the squadron that's out here. And this squadron are torpedo bombers. Um, and this brought up an interesting point. I had this discussion with someone in the comments, and I've had this discussion before, kind of asking the question, what's the deal with British carriers? British carriers do not carry a ton of planes. They carry much less than the US carriers, and they generally don't carry fighters. They've got torpedo bombers. Pretty much everything they carry are bombers. They also have a very thick uh, steel protection on the deck that protects them from bombs. So they're hard to sink. Well, we could go down a rabbit hole with that. The extra protection if a bomb got down into the hold could cause a real problem. But that being said, they have more armor up on the deck, so a little harder to sink. unless you just hit the right spot. So anyway, the point of this is that British carriers are different than American carriers. They don't carry fighters. They carry much fewer numbers of planes. And someone pointed out to me that that was probably because, A, we have a lot of hindsight now, right? Going into World War II, the British and America, everybody in general had questions about what exactly a carrier force should look like. What should an air wing on a carrier look like? Nobody really knew the answer. I mean, aviation was fairly new. Aviation off of ships was definitely fairly new. It was just a mode of warfare that had not met battle yet. And so the British just kind of had a different outlook on it. They thought about the Mediterranean, where you would be doing more bombing and kind of more close in bombing, and didn't really think that the fighters would be as important. The Americans, meanwhile, thought about these long distances in the Pacific and thought, oh, well, we really need to protect our the ship itself with fighters, and we need to escort our bombers. Whereas the British, if they're in the Mediterranean, could arguably fly fighters off the land to protect their carrier if they needed to. So they didn't really need to carry it on the carrier. It's an interesting discussion. There's a lot going on there, right? But for our purposes playing the game, the Hermes only has these 12 torpedo bombers. We've got them using bombs now. They do not have torpedoes. This will need to go to a level 7 port, uh, and luckily enough, we have one on just the other side of the island. So we will be taking the Hermes, bringing it around here, docking it at Colombo, and at Colombo, we have several other ships that can join this light carrier task force. Now, I'll be honest with you, with the Hermes, a lot of what I do in the early game with it is hide it here at Colombo. There's not a whole lot you can do with it. I mean, without fighters, it's a bit of a sitting duck if it sits out here. You can't protect it. You can't do anything with it, really. I mean, if you still control Rangoon, I guess you could argue you could run like long range cap over it. But, that's playing with fire if you ask me. So the Hermes sits over here with its British task force with these other ships that capital ships that are British surface combat ships. They just kind of sit at Colombo. Now later on, depending on what your air situation, your air superiority situation is, they can, move and maybe try to help against a Japanese task force of surface ships. But again, that's a tough one. You got to be either really good or really lucky, in my experience, to have this ship do much early in the game at least. Of course, we've got some local mine sweeping, and we've got some more ASW with these mine sweepers that have core. They will be running ASW out here on the east side of Ceylon. So that leaves us with just Colombo. And let's look at Colombo now. As I already mentioned, very surprisingly, it only has a 10 assault strength here. It needs 40, so it's under garrisoned. Okay. Um, we have several task forces that we've built here. So let's just take a quick look at them. We've got a cargo to Port Blair, and we've kind of talked about that. I like to supply Port Blair and have this as a nice little backup from Rangoon. These ships are worth 2 points, so we're going to put them on continuous supply to Port Blair for supplies and just run them here all game. If they get blown out of the water, that's sad, but that's what we're going to do with them. This AKL, so a light transport ship, this is going to be running continuous supply here to North Mail. Now, question whether we even need that much supply at Mail, probably not, and we may turn it off at some point. But early in the game, just so I don't forget about it, this is one of those crap ships, 4010 with 1750 capacity. We may put it with the other one, the one that's coming over here at some point, and either run it to Port Blair or to Rangoon. They probably won't last long. Um, these huge endurance, huge capacity, and average speed for a cargo ship 12. So we're sending them to Cape Town. These are kind of the same, but they're a little faster, right? So the 14, 14, 13, 13, we've just ran, we've put them in a task force because their speeds are similar, because we're really sending them over to Cape Town to join other ships. Let's turn on auto disband when they get there. We've got another Corvette, the Jasmine. We're going to merge that with the task force. That's another one of these, merge with some task force we have not formed yet. We will keep that under advisement. Now, here's kind of the big, crazy looking task force for this turn, and that is this cargo Rangoon. So we are going to be docking. We're going to be loading up these supplies. 3,900, 39, what's the total? 39,000. We got 10 of these ships. We're going to load it up with supply, and we're going to go flying into Rangoon to hopefully drop off their first supplies, and then after we run one run, so these are all worth 7 points. It's kind of getting close to that line, but we need to get as many supplies into Rangoon on the first 2 or 3 turns that we can. Generally, you can get these in here before the Japanese really start focusing on Rangoon. So this hopefully will not be a suicide mission. Of course, if you lost all of these, it would be 70 points. That's a lot, but we'll be flying a lot of cap over Rangoon, and hopefully we can get them in here once, and then we may split them into 2 or 3 different task forces. We'll look at that in the future. This group is, a hodgepodge of different things, all kinds of different endurances, capacities, speeds, the with a minimum speed of 14 at least. We're sending those all up to Abaddon, or we should. Whoa, how did I end up all the way over here? I guess I was talking about Rangoon. We're sending these up off map to Abaddon, and we are going to put on auto disband for this group. And when they get up here, we'll kind of decide what to put different ships with. Now, we took a Corvette out of here to send with just to protect this group. If a Japanese sub is over here and takes us out this early in the game, God bless. But I think what we'll do is take this Corvette and put it with a good tanker force, which is kind of how you want to use these and other destroyers or other ships that go with task forces to protect them for ASW. You want to start with the big tankers. They are the most important, especially early, but really the entire game. Local minesweep, okay, we've seen that before. ASW Colombo. The Romney is going to be running some ASW for us. And this cargo, I have the generic cargo going to Cape Town. These are really fast ships here. So you're starting to get that kind of rhythm of how we set these up. We look for similar speeds early in the game here to get things where we want them to go. It doesn't make sense to have these ships go with the speed 12 ships because you're just slowing them down. You might as well save yourself a turn or two, get them there faster, get them loaded up, and these guys with this endurance almost assuredly will be going to Perth, except for the Athene here, which is a little different. This is, well, let's just hover over it. This is a cargo aircraft, okay? So this is a cargo ship made especially to transport aircraft. Quite likely there will be some aircraft coming into Cape Town that we will bring to Colombo, bring into India potentially, maybe even into Rangoon, although these are pretty good ships. And 28 very doubtful we would take this into Rangoon. We'll probably bring the planes here to Colombo, then we would put the planes on something else, but question whether we would even send planes all the way into a hot zone on cargo ships. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. When active planes, you can transport, right, from base to base. You can transfer and do it that way. So anyway, I think that really covers everything from Celebes. to Ceylon. This has been an interesting one. There were, some new things going on, some new things to talk about. I always like those episodes. Now, the next couple of episodes are really going to be something new to talk about because well, if I can ever find it, we will be looking at this massive, massive ground conflict going on in China and how you deal with it. And we'll talk a lot about how ground units work. I will say, looking back on the tutorial, the one element of the game that maybe I didn't, fully explore as much as I wanted to would probably be ground units. I left them until last, and I did that on purpose because, of course, it's a Pacific War game. If you pick this up, you were probably really fired up about the air war and the naval war. Of course, in every war, the ground units are the ultimate arbiter, and we will start getting into those next episode. So, as always, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. If you liked this or just want to see more content like this, give me a subscribe. I would appreciate it. And for Strategy Gaming Dojo, I will talk to you next time. Thanks again.